Yes, yes. The chin a tiny bit lower. Gaze a little more to the right. There! Now, hold the pose.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? So I wanted to do a review for Greedfall. Greedfall is a game made by the Spiders game studio and published by Folks Home Interactive. For me, Spiders is best known for the games Technomancer, Mars Warlogs, and Bound by Flame. I really only know those games by title, though. I've seen them around over the years, and I checked Mars Warlogs out early on. There was a demo on the PlayStation. But I know they've made those games, and I've picked them all up on PC because I want to go through them. I think they might be a little janky here and there, but this is like a AA developer. But I want to see what they do because Greedfall is pretty amazing, I think. So, I would not describe Greedfall as your typical story. You are a legate being sent alongside your cousin who is to a new island, and your cousin's going to be the governor of your faction city on the island, and then you just kind of go from there. You start out on the mainland with some side missions to get you used to the game flow and how things happen, and then there's an event right before you go over to the island. From there, you end up on the island and you go around exploring and advancing the main story arc, which is kind of nebulous, really. I didn't ever feel like there was a major story taking place until pretty much the end. It all kind of blended together for the most part. There is a main arc, but the way it was all put together, I found myself just caught up in all the drama of the island and basically got lost in all of that and not really the main story arc as much until it's like right in your face.
I thank you.
Now, there are side quests for the various factions and side quests for your companions, but a lot of those were written in a way that they all flowed into the main story arc, and it all just felt naturally integrated. It was like one big story. For instance, one companion is studying the Islanders and their magic. Well, the main story has you making alliances with the Islanders and learning bits and pieces of their tradition and magic as well, so you're advancing her story arc, which doesn't feel terribly out of place while advancing the main story arc compared to like Final Fantasy XIV Online. You're filling a bucket for some random hermit, go fill the bucket, put the water in the bucket, pick the bucket, and just crap like that. These all felt integrated into everything. There are some side missions that don't quite align, like the Knot guy trying to find out who his family was, but they still fit the whole world. And they're not out of place. So you don't have the go fill up fetch quest bucket water bullshit. I found the main story and the side quests to be all very engaging. They had, like I said, a pretty difficult time sorting out which was which at times. You could look at your quest panel and see what you were on, whether it was a main story or a side quest. But it was kind of rare that I bothered to look at that. I just did whatever quest popped up on the thing, and that's where I went. And most of the quests, in fact, I don't remember any of them that I didn't like. They all did something interesting and went pretty cool places. Now, one positive or negative, depending on your opinion of it, is just how much dialogue is in this game. Personally, I love the whole thing. There is a ton of dialogue, and even as much as I enjoyed it all throughout, I found myself cutting it kind of short towards the end. Doom Eternal was out. I got my VR headset. Half-Life Alyx was coming out. I wanted this game to be over with. And it just kept wearing on and wearing on. They do put captions on the screen so you can just scan it real fast and then dismiss it. So I wasn't missing the story. I was just skipping the voice acting part. No big deal. Now, the conversations that you get into all feel really natural, and I think that was one of the most immersive things in this game. Not everything flowed together well, though. Like, there was one part where someone referenced a dead character being dead, and then, like, the next sentence they said was how they were a good leader currently, as if the death hadn't happened. So it was a little weird in certain places, but a few other bits here and there. But like 85-90% of the dialogue was just supernatural. Extremely natural, not supernatural like Ghost, but it was just very natural, everything flowed correctly, and you even get choices in the dialogue options. It just all gelled very nicely. You know, what somebody would say to you, your response to them was great. Of course, along with the dialogue comes the nicely done voice acting, and there were some character skins that got reused quite a bit, but the actual individual voice actors themselves, it was done well done, if you ask me. The Islanders had their own accent and a bit of their own language, and amazingly enough, you could talk to quite a few different people, and none of them sounded the same. None dropped their accent either. Other factions all have their own way of speaking. Not sure how many voice actors were involved, but this was done just well done all the way around. Everyone you talk to has a distinct voice in audio and speech and accent and everything. So you get this amazing immersion into the world around you. Speaking of immersion, the world itself is very alive. In the towns, you might have a blacksmith banging on a sword and street vendors calling out their wares. There's a very lived-in feel to the various towns and villages in the game. Even areas outside have a buzz of bugs and monsters out in the distance, so you never really feel alone. The whole game feels very 1700s, and there's a yellow filter applied to everything, which makes it feel like kind of like an old parchment. Of course, you got the sailing vessels, the taverns, the shops, the muddy streets, the wooden villages. It just comes together for this awesome atmosphere. Now, this isn't exactly an open world game. It's open areas, I would say, but it's not open world. The island gets broken down into various sections that are pretty large, but you still have to teleport around or travel between the areas. But as you push deeper in the island and you get away from the bigger cities that the factions have, you start running into small villages of islanders, and occasionally you'll find some partially built cities of mainlanders. They're very crudely made, as if they were tossed together in a hurry. Just the way everything's pieced together, from the nice, well-built cities all the way out to the ramshackle huts and stuff out in the jungle or the forest or whatever. It's fantastic. So moving on to combat, there is combat in this game, and I have achievements for killing hundreds of monsters and hundreds of humans. So there is a lot of combat, but I don't really think it was a main focus of this game. I spent far more time in dialogue and traversal around than I did in combat, and maybe a third of the game's combat, I guess. The combat that you do get is the third-person dodge, parry, swing variety. You can get a firearm and some magic, if you work your skills and attributes that direction. I took very little magic and pretty much spread everything around melee and firearms. And for the combat portion, there's also traps and other things you can get into. It's a good variety. Adds to the replay value. Most of my stuff was kind of a general. Most of the skills, attributes, and talents that I took were more for conversations and things like that. I didn't take as much into combat as I probably should have, but they give you a lot of ways of, you can climb higher if you take more points in a certain skill. And they do checks against that. So like there's a tightrope walking thing that you can do across certain areas if you have the correct skill. You can climb certain heights if you have the skill. If you don't have them, you can't get there, and you can't get the items behind it. So there's a lot of variety in the ways you can build your character for combat or non-combat. Now the enemies you'll be fighting range from your standard humans from all the different factions up to some big beasts. I would say this is kind of a 50-50 mix, because you quite a number of the battles end up being with the various factions on the island. So there's all the human people, but there are a number of monsters patrolling the maps, and there are bigger monsters, and the big fights are the monsters. The big boss battles are pretty much monsters. The big monsters do offer some pretty big difficulty spikes, just like out of nowhere, and you have to beat that fight to advance the main story. So if you have kind of a crappy build, you're going to be stuck until you either go and level up or figure something out or just try it multiple times. So you may get stuck. Now, what kind of gameplay is this whole game? So there is combat in here, but there's a lot of dialogue and map exploration and things like that. You get a real use for charisma and having which companions you have in your party. There's times when it depends on who's in your party that you can't get to certain areas. Now, the one place in particular, I could replace the guy and come back, but there are options based on who is in your party and how your party is made up. And the party members will interact with each other also to a degree. For the most part, I kept Siora, the island girl, and I did try to keep the third person in my party to whoever was pertinent to the faction I was working with, simply because they could sometimes help sway things when I couldn't. Now, with all of this, there is a lot of backtracking. As mentioned, I had someone in my party that wasn't allowed, so I had to run back, go get somebody else, come back. You can fast travel around to the various camps, but sometimes they're not close to where you need to be, and sometimes you're going to a place, back to a city, then back to the place, and if that place is a distance from the camp, you have to go run to the camp, travel off, travel back, run back to where you need to be. You know, it's a lot of backtracking. Down and back, down and back, down and back. Each traversal between the hub areas is a visit to a peddler. So as long as you're traveling within the area, it's pretty instant. But if you travel from area to area, it's going to be a loading screen, basically, where you can go interact with a vendor, which was kind of nice. But I don't know. I like the overall way they did this. I don't know how it would have improved, but it was kind of a cool way of traversing the island. Now, there were some weird nuances to the game. Like, they had some odd timers. You'll finish a quest sometimes, and it's not very many, but there's a few, and they're just kind of weird. I don't really know what to expect from them. You'll finish the quest, the NPC tells you come back tomorrow. Well, then a timer will pop up and count down for 24 hours. So you'd have to run back to camp, sleep up until that, sleep 8-10 hours, whatever you could get, as close to that timer, and then come back and just let it run down. Each second in real life counts as a minute of game time. So if they say wait a day, you have to pass 24 minutes, and you just go sleep as much of it off as you can, come back, and then wait 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it was that I had to wait, typically. But the odd thing was, there were times that you had an option to just say, hey, I want to wait until dark. Well, I didn't really get why they didn't just make the other ones, hey, can I come back tomorrow, and just click wait till tomorrow. No clue what that was for. I don't know if you can fail that time period, or if you can, like, if you travel somewhere else and then come back, if that person's like dead, gone. I don't know. I don't know what changes that did. But there is a lot of choice in the game, and everything seems to impact something else in some way. So that was kind of cool. There are puzzles to solve. There's not many. There was 2 big ones, and I just browsed the web for them. So the first was they showed a cutscene that basically told you everything you needed to do, and your guy recaps the cutscene, but there's no way to replay it. There's no way to see what it was again. So you get dumped out in the main world, and then they say, oh, by the way, that vision you just had solves this puzzle. So it's like, all right, well, what the hell? So I looked it up, and there was a second one later, but it was a spoken one, not a visual one. But it was the same thing. They just dump you out and say, hey, go figure it out. So I Googled those up. I just didn't feel like screwing with them. I just wanted to get them done, Now, there is a bit of stealth in this game. I am bad at stealth, so I just used it only when I had to. You get faction points for not killing certain people, or, various things like that. But you can sneak up on the monsters or NPCs with their back turned and just one-hit kill them. I did see somebody laying traps in some other video, so there's a lot of variety to everything you can do here. But for me, stealth was pretty much minor, and I just brute force everything anyway. The big fights don't allow for stealth at all, and as far as I could tell, and dialogue options kind of allow you to avoid certain things or get into certain things. So I didn't necessarily have to use that much of
But what were you looking for here? We came to study this place.
stealth.
The carvings in particular.
So
This is one of our places of ritual.
there is some branching in this game, the branching story. And I feel like the story can go multiple ways. And I definitely want to hit this up again and probably do magic with different story choices the next time around. There seems to be kind of a romantic thing, which you probably have to follow the companion quests all the way down to the end, but I didn't do that, and nothing's triggered yet for me, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's multiple endings to this, so there's definitely some replay value in there. And I'm looking forward to it, quite honestly. But before we wrap this all up, let's talk about the bad things. So one thing was the weird wait timers. They were kind of annoying. I didn't really understand their place in everything. The big difficulty spikes felt kind of weird at times. And every so often this big fight would just happen and you weren't prepared for it by anything previously. So it felt kind of out of place. You're fighting these little creatures and all of a sudden there's this big boss fight. At first I couldn't figure out how to get, and it took me pretty much till the end of the game, but dodging on the shift key blows. I do not like hitting that key. It's an off key for me. I found out how to finally get it bound to the space bar. I think I tried it, but it didn't save. So I just lived with the space or the shift key, but the final boss battle was so quick I couldn't do shift anymore. I had to do space. Kind of a minor detail is some of the buildings look a bit samey. Like they have the same floor plan. They may have some different decorations or different sealed areas or whatever, but they get kind of similar. I get it. It's a lower budget game, but I mean, it was an issue. Early in the game, I had some FPS issues, and I kind of think it was because I was trying to record at the same time. It did smooth out over time, but I also had gone in, I quit recording, so now I'm using my laptop to record instead of recording directly on my gaming rig. And I also somebody recommended that you turn down the clothing textures and that it would even things out. So that seemed to fix whatever FPS issues I had. Now, that's kind of really the only complaints that I have. The next thing was a complaint, but it's more of probably me just wanting to get to other things. So the game just really wore on at the end. I was at 28 hours on a Friday, and I finished it off at 34 hours on a Sunday. So an extra 6 hours it took me to beat the game from where I thought I was kind of close to the end. And I wasn't even anywhere near it. The story was good, and like I said at the beginning, I kind of blew through some of the not skip, but just blew through some of the conversations a little quicker to get it done. But there were points where you'd think, oh man, I'm right at the end. And then they'd send you on another set of quests. And it just kept going like that. And I'm like, man, I really want to go play Half-Life and Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades and Doom Eternal. I'm like, I'm wanting to play all these other games, but I'm stuck trying to finish this thing off. So I don't necessarily blame the game for that. It is a complaint that I have just because I was in a hurry. But I don't think it's not something that I would knock the game for. Ultimately, this is a very satisfying game to play. I thought the story was extremely well done. The voice acting was amazing. The game world and atmosphere were just superb. Graphically, I thought it was really good. I've seen some other people kind of knock the graphics, but it didn't seem like they had quite as good a graphics card as I had, because I think the game looked fantastic to me. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. And I believe this is a very well-made game. It's very engaging, and it's definitely worth all of the praise I've heard about it since it came out. This is a game for fans of really good story-driven RPGs. Highly recommend this. I waited for a sale because I didn't buy it on day one, and I got it a little cheaper. So I always recommend getting something on sale if you can, and buy it if you really have to play it, pay full price. But I would really recommend this game. So that's it. 8 out of 10. Take care, stay socially isolated and all that good stuff. And like and sub if you enjoy this. And that's it for now. Take care.